In this video, I'm going to be discussing how I got 100% in some of my ATPL theory exams and the exact method that I used in order to guarantee my success in my theory for my pilot training. First and foremost, who am I? I'm an airline pilot, and I've been an airline pilot for the past few years, where I now currently work with aspiring pilots towards streamlining their journey in this industry. And so hopefully some of the insights that I can give you will help you on your journey towards becoming a pilot too. When it comes to my journey of becoming an airline pilot, I wasn't the most academically smart. In fact, when I was in primary school and in secondary school, I was actually in the lower sets for each of my year groups. So what that means is I was not academically gifted. I was someone that had to work incredibly hard in order to achieve success in any of my academic endeavors. And that had to be applied to my ATPL theory too. I was someone that was incredibly young. I was only 19 years old when I started out in terms of my training towards becoming an airline pilot. So I was fresh out of school, had very minimal life experience, and I went straight into an integrated training program where I had to do 7 exams in the space of 3 months and then another 7 exams in the next 3 months. So 14 exams for my ATPLs, my airline transport pilot license theory exams, to become an airline pilot. And that was when I was 19. And I managed to pass them all with a very, very high average. And that was due to a number of methods, which I'm going to discuss. Now, first and foremost, what was the fundamental reason I passed those exams? Well, I would say, and this is a very, very basic answer to begin with, we'll go into a bit more detail later, but it starts with your routine. So fundamentally, my routine was built from a very, very young age. I started boxing when I was in my teens. Because I had to balance my school life with my boxing endeavors, I had to build a good routine in my secondary school period of my life. So as a result of the skills I learned from building that routine, I then implemented that into my pilot training. The caveat was that I couldn't do anything other than training. So I had to build out a routine that was focused and centered around my revision. So how did that look? Well, fundamentally, it started from the night before. And this even applies to my day-to-day life as an airline pilot. When I'm prepping for a flight or prepping for anything, I'm always working from the day and the night before. So first and foremost, the night before, I'm going to make sure I get the time I need in order to be completely refreshed and awake in the morning after. And generally, for me, it's around 8 to 7 hours of sleep time that I need, solid sleep. If I don't have that, then I'm going to be really tired the next day. Sometimes I can get away with it, but generally I need 7 to 8 hours. And most people are in the same bracket as me, especially if you're a young person. You need a bit more sleep than older people for sure. Now, when it comes to the sleep element, I've locked that off. I've got the sleep that I need, so I know that for the next day, I'm going to be well rested and alert and ready to go for the day ahead, for the training that's involved, for the learning that I'm going to be indulged in. So what do? I wake up in the morning. I usually woke up very, very early, about 2 hours or 3 hours before my actual day began. So in a integrated school, it's like a flight school. It's almost like you go in at 9 o'clock, you start your day at 9 o'clock, and then you finish at around 3 or 4 o'clock. So for me, I would wake up extra early, sometimes around 6 a.m., because I was commuting an hour each day to get to my training academy. I couldn't afford to live out, so I was commuting back and forth from my hometown to get to the training academy where I was then doing my training. Now, I wouldn't advise that. I'd advise if you have the capacity to live close by to your training provider so that you can then be more efficient and optimal with your timings. But for me, that's what I had to do. So I had to wake up extra early and I had to go to sleep extra early. I would make sure I get there about an hour earlier than everybody else so that I could do an hour of prep and revision before the day actually starts. So I got there about an hour earlier, and I'll go into detail as to how I prepped in specifics in a little while. But I'd get there an hour earlier and I would do my prep, my revision for 1 hour solid. And then we would start our lessons. And that would be at about 9 o'clock. We'd go through the lessons throughout the entirety of the day and finish at around 4 o'clock. At the end of the day, I would then stay in the school. I would specifically stay there because I knew that if I went home, I would be distracted at home. So I stayed in the school. I forced myself to stay in the school. And yes, you're probably asking, when did I eat? When did I do all of these things? Well, actually, I was pretty caveman-esque. I would get my mum to make me pack lunch and I would just eat that pretty much and then eat dinner at the evening time. Sometimes as well, the training provider that I had a cafeteria nearby, so I'd go and get food there. But I would be very, very efficient. It was always hyper-focused on getting the revision done, getting the practice and the theory side of things locked in and under my belt. That would always be the center focus for me. I would finish the day of lessons and everything else, and then I would study afterwards until around 8 o'clock. So that would be about 4 hours of intense study. 8 o'clock, I would then finish, go back home. It would take me about 45 minutes or an hour to get back home. I would eat, so I'd have a 30-minute block to eat, and then I would go to sleep. So I was very, very disciplined and militant on my timings. Very, very militant. And that helped me. That helped me massively because that routine was just consistent clockwork over and over and over and over and over again. Now, when it came to my downtime and my rest, yes, I did have rest. I had rest on my drive home. I would literally just chill out that whole drive, and then at the 30 minutes when I was eating, I would just listen to like some brain dead YouTube content just so that I could relax my brain and get ready for bed. However, I would always factor that into my day as well. You need it. You need time to just switch your brain off and relax. As well as that, when it comes to rest and sleep, you need adequate sleep because that is when your brain is going to actually consume all of the information. It's almost like building a muscle. Our brains are muscles. So when it comes to tearing your muscles, when do they repair the most? Well, they repair the most when you're asleep. And it's the same with our brain. When it comes to learning new information, when does it repair the most? When does it instill and actually get drained into your head the most? Well, it's when you sleep. So factor in a good amount of sleep. It's so fundamentally important for anybody that's learning something new. Get your sleep in. Now, the second thing I really want you to focus on when it comes to your theory exams and to try and ace those is paying attention in class. Because what I did was I paid really, really close attention and focus on my teachers, respected everything that they had to say in the class environment. Why? Because then any questions that I had in my head when it came to outside of the classroom, when it came to the revision and everything else, were already answered in the classroom itself. And yes, I know it's very, very difficult to pay attention from start to finish in a classroom environment, especially with the intensity of a theory course for pilot training. It's very, very difficult to pay very close attention. However, I urge you to try your best to from the beginning because your brain's going to start building neuroplasticity to learn how to pay closer and closer attention the more you do it. So force your brain to. Even if you see yourself drifting away, bring yourself back onto the subject. Don't drift away and stay there. Literally bring yourself back because every time you bring yourself back, you're building strength in your brain to allow you to continue doing that for the foreseeable future. And it's going to build you the resilience to do that over and over and over again. And you'll become more and more indulged in the focus of the lesson. So I urge you in your lessons, really, really pay close attention and focus on what your teacher's saying. Focus on what they're saying because what they're going to be doing is teaching you really fundamental things that are going to help you when it comes to a revision outside of the lesson. As well as that, make sure you relax yourself really, really well. Don't think about work. As soon as the work's done of the day, really just close the books and forget about it because you can focus on that when it comes to working the next day. When the books are closed, just relax and enjoy yourself because it's very limited in terms of the time that we do get to enjoy ourselves in our theory stages of training. So having that moment or those brief moments of actual enjoyment and not thinking about work is really, really precious. And I absolutely cherished those moments for myself. And I would urge you to do the same. If you are in a position where you're no longer thinking about work, you've closed the books, then close the books and forget about them until the next day. Honestly, it's the best way to approach it. I remember before my instrument rating exam, I was immersed so heavily in the books and it was overwhelmingly stressing me out. I was getting really, really anxious about the exam itself and thinking to myself, oh, I've not done enough work, so I need to keep in the books. And then I spoke to my sister who eventually told me, Adam, just put the books to the side and just forget about it. You've done all the work necessary. You've been doing this for months. What's one more night worth of delving into books and trying to learn them and memorize the books going to do for you? So she essentially just said, close the books, go to the gym. And that's exactly what I did. The very next day I had my instrument rating and I passed it. And I would say, I genuinely believe, hand on heart, it was because of the advice that my sister gave me to just forget about it, lock my brain off and just relax that evening. Because it allowed me to de-stress, allowed me to relax and just convince myself, yes, I've put in the work and we'll see what happens the next day. And thanks to God, it worked out. So I'd really highly recommend locking off. When it comes to switching off your brain, switch it off. Now, the final thing that helped me in terms of getting a high average in my theory exams was doing question after question after question after question. Now, why am I saying that? I'm not saying just focus on questions. Of course, you need to understand what you're doing and what the content is surrounding and what information you need. But the reason I'm saying to do question after question after question is because it's backed by science. Because neuroscientists have actually said that the likelihood of you passing a specific exam is directly proportional to the amount of practice tests that you do. So the more questions that you do, and specifically if you can do open-ended questions, ask yourself, then what you're going to find is you are going to absorb that information better and you're going to perform better in a final exam. This is backed by a real case study where they actually got a group of people and they got them to sit in a room, they got them to study some material, and then they got another group of people, they got them to sit in a room and they got them to do practice tests on that material. And they found that the people that did better were the ones that did the most practice tests. So what I urge you to do if you're in your theory exams and you're trying to go through learning theory and in an academic environment is do as many practice tests and questions as you physically can to the point where it's literally second nature in terms of answering questions. You know exactly how to approach them. Now, we have the benefit in our pilot niche that all of the questions are multiple choice questions. Now, yes, there's a caveat to that. It makes it even more difficult because you could have 3 correct answers and you have to choose the most correct answer. And I know how it was. It was very difficult at times. However, if you do enough questions, you're going to realize there's little patterns that you can pick up on that will indicate why an answer is correct or wrong. And really, you'll find that your body is going to build a gut instinct to answering these kind of questions the more that you do. Our central nervous system doesn't just incorporate our brain, it also incorporates a lining in our belly. So the gut instinct that we have is actually a real thing. It's actually something that we train ourselves to build. So by doing enough questions, you're going to build that central nervous system to actually understand that if you see a question and you're thinking this is the answer, well, actually more than likely the answer is going to be what you think it is. And that leads me on to another point when it comes to questions. If you're in an exam and you're doing a test, what I want you to do is the first answer you put to any question, really, really try your best not to change that answer. Why? Because your gut instinct is telling you something by clicking that particular answer. It's literally telling you something. So unless you're absolutely abundantly clear that that question is wrong or that answer that you put is wrong, then do not change your answer. That's something I urge all of my clients to do, and that's what I urge you to do as well, because it's very, very easy to self-doubt and have second thoughts about an answer that you put. Very easy to do that, and then change it, and then find out later that your first answer was correct. And the amount of times that I've heard these kind of stories is absolutely ridiculous. So I urge you, unless you're absolutely sure, if your first answer is on that page, don't change it unless you're abundantly clear that it is a different answer for whatever reason. Now, these are the 3 points that helped me massively in my theory exams. Of course, there's a number of other things that I used in order to help me, which I'll go into more detail with future videos. So if I could ask you to just subscribe to my channel. If you want any help on your journey towards becoming a pilot, there's a link in the description that you can use in order to start working with me. And hopefully I can help you streamline your success in becoming an airline pilot. That being said, I hope you enjoyed and I'll see you very soon.